So I'm speaking with composer Anne Nikitin. Anne's talents as a storyteller can be heard in scores like The Imposter, The Beautiful Fantastic, Chuck Norris versus Communism, and recently American Animals, which features Ann Dowd, Evan Peters, and Blake Jenner. American Animals will be premiering at Sundance this year, and it reunites her with director Bart Layton. Anne, thanks so much for talking today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So to start, I'd love to kind of know how kind of your story began. When did you discover, your love for music, and at what point in your life did you decide to make it a career?
Well, I've loved music my entire life. I was a little bit obsessed with it even as a little kid. Not just listening to music, but making my own music, sort of singing into tape recorders and writing down music. Even though I couldn't read or write music at the time, I kind of invented my own way. I was about 8. And then through high school, I was taught myself guitar badly, but I taught myself, and I would sit in my bedroom with friends and we'd write music, and we kind of wanted to be in a band. And then I watched a film called The Piano by Jane Campion when I was a teenager, and I listened to Michael Nyman's score. And it was the first time I'd paid attention to film music, because I was suddenly completely absorbed in the story and the music as one entity. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. That's what I want to do. So I did a degree in composition at McGill University in Canada, which was more avant-garde, but it was good fun. And then I went to the Royal College of Music in London, where I did a film music course. And then thought I would get my dream job straight away, writing music for film. Didn't quite work out that way. It was many, many years till I got my first commission, and that was through winning a BBC competition.
Oh, wow.
So very, very lucky. And since then, it's been a snowball effect. I've been very lucky. It's been great.
Right. So, I mean, just getting your foot in the door is probably the hardest part, but once it's open, you kind of able to get some more work coming in.
Absolutely. Getting the foot in the door was really tough. And I get so many emails from young composers asking how I did it, how they can do it. And I really feel for them. It was such a painful struggle. And you've just got to keep going. And, also for my parents who were despairing that their child wanted to be a musician,
Right.
I think they were very relieved when I finally got a job.
Absolutely. So yeah, you have such an incredible body of work. But let's talk about American Animals, which you worked with director Bart Layton on The Imposter. So when Bart reached out to you to get involved, like at what point in the process did he reach out to you, and kind of what were those initial conversations about that you had of what the musical goals were going to be for the film?
Well, after The Imposter, he kept mentioning this new idea he had, so I kind of felt he might ask me back. And then he sent me the script in sort of the mid to late stages of writing it. And so that's when the conversations started. And so he brought me on very early on, which was great. And I read the script and completely fell in love with it. It was just the most vibrant and absorbing plot, and the way he told the story, and the genre as well that he's been exploring, sort of a mix between documentary and drama again, but pushing the limits.
Right.
So I just felt very excited to be back on board with him, and knowing the way he works, and I just loved The Imposter. I thought it was such a beautifully crafted film. I knew this one wouldn't be a disappointment.
Right. And so when it was, I think, a bit of a gap between Imposter and now. So did it feel like picking up where you left off when you started working with him, or did the collaboration differ at all? Because last one was a documentary, kind of like a proper documentary. And now this is, kind of a fixed narrative.
Yeah, it kind of did feel like we'd picked. I also do a lot of work for his company, Raw.
Oh, right.
So he exec produces a lot of the series that go out that I tend to score. So I kept bumping into him. So we've kept a relationship going. But this one, when we met up for the first time after reading the script, he said, "Okay, this is like The Imposter, but in a different direction now, a more extreme direction, more drama." More action, are you ready for it? And I said, yep, for it. So we both knew it was going to be a different kind of challenge. But we worked so well together on the Imposter. I thought, it would be a similar experience, and it was. It was more intense, I have to say. And he's the kind of director who is just brilliant. He's bold with his filmmaking. He's a real visionary, but he's also tough on you, and he doesn't let anything go. He's got an incredible eye and ear for detail, and he likes to experiment and exhaust all the possibilities before he's going to let anything go
Right.
or accept anything. So, in some ways, it was extremely tough, exhausting, tiring. But in other ways, it really pushed me, and I'm really grateful for that. And he's also very gracious when he asks for demanding changes. So
That's
you
good.
can't say no. You can't get angry.
So kind of walk us through your process on this film. Where did the kind of the first note come from? What did you try to absorb and take in from the film before that first note kind of pops out of your head? I mean, you were sent the script early. Is that kind of where your process starts, or where do you normally kind of begin?
Well, every film is different. You hop on board at different stages
Right.
depending on the director. But for this one, we both knew this would be such a challenging film that he wanted me on early, and I really needed that time, it turns out, in the end.
Hmm.
Um, it was such a complex film, so many layers, different types of mood. It ranges from humor to drama to tension, and then there's the genre, the crossover between doc and drama that we had to weave the documentary in seamlessly so you wouldn't jolt the audience out. So music had to help with that process. And then he gives all these nods to old movies as well in the film, because American Animals is sort of a movie within a movie, and so we had to play with that idea. So I did have, for the first time ever, I had a terrible brain block at
Oh
the
wow.
beginning process. I was so nervous about trying to compile all of these different ideas and genres, and we both knew it would be such a mixed bag of music, and then having to make a homogenous kind of score so it didn't sound bitty or disparate. That was a real challenge. So we listened to a lot of music, current film scores, old film scores. Um, we were just forever sending each other tracks that we thought, would work. Styles of music, and so I ended up just having to just write, just brain dump, and a lot of it got thrown away, and a lot of it became themes, and I was able to develop.
Oh wow. Was finding because you talk about all these different genres and different
Mm.
was finding the right tone a challenge? I feel like that would have been a difficult thing on this movie if you're weaving between genres and styles of doc. And was tone kind of a challenge at all?
You're absolutely right. Tone was a big challenge, and not just for me, but for the editor as well. I was
Yeah.
working very closely with the edit suite. We met very regularly and would watch things and listen to things. So at first, that tonally we all went very dark, and after the first screening, we all knew it was just too dark, and as a result, it was a bit slow. So then, the notes came back, make it funnier. So then it was the other extreme. It was too funny and too light, and it wasn't right. So it was definitely finding that balance, which took a long time, but I think we got there. I feel we.
And so at the I mean, you encountered a lot of challenge on this. What was the most rewarding part of the process?
The last day in the dub, finishing it.
Being able to say you've been finished.
Being able to say I got through it. Yes. No, it, the most rewarding, I have to say, was recording it. We recorded at Abbey Road, and I used the London Contemporary Orchestra, who are just the most amazing orchestra. They were completely fitting for the kind of music I was writing, which adopts sort of avant-garde techniques and a lot of the string writing. So I worked closely with them, and spent a day just recording strings and some brass and woodwinds in Abbey Road, and just having a great time with those guys.
That's amazing. I mean, as a composer, what does it feel like? Like, what kind of emotions go through you when you kind of hear your music played out loud? Kind of coming to life. From your head and coming into the air.
Yeah, interesting question. A lot of emotions. I'm sure it's different for everybody, but
Right.
it ranges from shock because it sounds so different. You're so used to the demos that you've been listening to for the last few months.
Right.
And then but then you get into it and it's very rewarding. It's exciting, especially
Absolutely.
if they play it well, which they did.
Yeah. Yeah, if they played it not so well, it would have been a problem, but
Yeah,
luckily you had a good team.
exactly. That could be a disaster.
So, kind of in general about your process and approach, not specifically maybe for just American animals, but when you're kind of watching, even if you're just a viewer, even if you're not even working on the project, what kind of like, I guess, what do you gravitate towards to about a film the most? I mean, it's going to be a combination of things, but is it maybe like the plot in general, the kind of the central idea of the stories, the characters and their personalities, the cinematography? Is there anything that kind of like speaks to you as a storyteller more and that kind of informs your process?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above.
Yeah,
For me, I suppose I'm noticing it's the mood of a film. So I'm really drawn to
like
moody kind of
atmosphere.
films, atmosphere and
Yeah.
cinematography, plot definitely. But some of my favorite films have been Drive and Lost in Translation and the original Blade Runner, where you're
Mm-hmm.
just sucked into the atmosphere and you're absorbing all the colors and the mood, and it's a journey that I really enjoy.
Absolutely. And you've also scored an amazing array of doc series and feature docs, and this movie kind of blends documentary into it. Does scoring a documentary differ at all from scoring a fictional narrative? I mean, do you approach it differently? Does the fact that it's a real, it really happened, does that add any more weight to the project?
That's a really interesting question. It's something that's been a bit of a bugbear with me and a lot of my composer friends, that there's a stigma with people with when it comes to documentary and drama,
Mm-hmm.
and how if you're writing documentary music, you can't possibly be able to write drama music, and it's the same for directors and editors. I think things are changing now. There's a lot of hybrid. There's a lot of people interested in documentary, but yeah, I have had this said to me, oh, well, if you're used to writing documentary, you couldn't possibly do my drama, which really made me
Oh God.
annoyed
Yeah.
because I don't approach it any differently. Um, so, I mean, I started off writing music for drama docs, like a series called Locked Up Abroad,
Mm-hmm.
which is a raw series, and it's been on for 12 years. I started doing that, and it's very dramatic. It's got all the twists and turns. It's high action. It's emotional. It's got everything in it. And you're as a composer, your job is to quickly, intensify the action and then go straight into emotion. And there's these quick turnarounds with the music, and it's very challenging. So I almost found these drama docs harder than straight dramas in
Wow.
many.
Yeah.
Um, and no, I don't approach it differently. I approach every film in the same way, which is to work with the director and enhance the drama that's there
Well,
and the emotions.
that's amazing. Yeah, because I've been noticing. I mean, there's especially with Netflix, and you're getting more documentaries kind of into your field of view, and I've been watching a lot more, and I've noticed just scoring because sometimes composers will take a reserved approach maybe and just be like, oh, it's you can't be too manipulative. But I've noticed that the ones that I really gravitate towards are where the composer that really treat it like any other narrative and just kind of be thematic, be bold, and kind of be a composer and make a score.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. You do have to be careful that you're not overbearing in
Right.
documentaries, but at the same time, you have to um, give it the same treatment as a drama. These are real life dramatic stories with these emotions, and they deserve the same sort of treatment, I think.
Right. Absolutely. So, kind of overall, in your opinion, what makes a score successful in your view as a composer working in the industry?
Ooh, a successful score. uh, I think working with the director is definitely the most important thing. Working to the brief
Mm-hmm.
and not being precious about your music. I think it's very important to have your voice in the score and stay true to yourself in your voice, but you also have to work to a brief, and it's a collaboration process. And so you've got to be willing to make the changes that are necessary for the greater good of the film, even if you feel it's ruining your piece of precious music.
Right.
It's probably better for the film. So you have to help the director realize his or her vision.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that key relationship is such an integral part to it, and finding
Yeah.
a director that can work well with a composer, and there's so many different types of personalities out there, so it's not always a match. But I mean,
Yeah,
when
yes. It's not always smooth sailing, definitely, but you try and make it as smooth
right.
as it can be.
And also, could you talk a little bit about your experience, about being a female composer in a field that is, of course, mostly dominated by men, and how this issue is kind of gaining more traction and attention recently, and not just with the sexual assault stuff that happened last year and this year, but just diversity behind the camera and kind of these creative roles, and your experience, being a professional in this field.
Sure. I think it's very, very exciting times for women in Hollywood, and female composers definitely. There are so few of us, and I really don't understand why. I myself have never suffered any prejudice that I'm aware of. I've been able to work consistently for 15 years, and directors and everyone on the crew have always treated me just as a composer,
Right.
which I love. I don't want to be seen as the female composer.
Right. Exactly.
I want to be seen as a composer. Um, so, having said that, I do feel like it's very puzzling in places like LA, where I have looked on agency books and there aren't any female composers. There's a few, but I was quite shocked when I went to LA about the feeling that I got there. This was some years back now. I think things are changing. Um, and it's tricky. I mean, I went for a job interview recently where they required a female composer,
Hmm.
and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I had mixed feelings. First I thought, great, well, you've narrowed it down. I have a better chance of getting the job.
Right.
It didn't really sit right. Um, I can understand why they're trying to promote women through this way. Maybe this is the way to get more female composers on board films. But for me, I feel like directors should be able to choose who they want to work with, especially as music is a very, very personal thing for a director. And
Absolutely.
I didn't want to impose myself on a director just because he needed to choose me because of my gender. So that's a bit of a tricky line for me, especially since I don't want to be thought of as the female composer.
Right.
So, I'm hoping we will get over this hurdle. I'm getting more and more emails from young female composers, and it's really great to get them. They're brilliant, beautiful music, amazing music, and versatile. And so I'm hoping that things will change and it'll just become normalized.
I think it's just that we're in a period now of transition and maybe awareness, and I'm
Mm.
seeing so many great things. And here in LA, we've had some great concerts recently. The Women Who Score concert, and we had
Yep.
the Futures female concert, and it's just getting more. I think more perspectives and more better stories will be told. I think so. I think it's moving towards a good direction.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been following that, and it's very encouraging to see.
Well, Anne, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for chatting and kind of getting into your process a bit. And it's been such a real pleasure. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me.